Now, as we're going through building our foundation, and we've talked about standards, the next thing to do is to talk about guidelines. Now, there are a number of different guidelines that you'll see referenced through the ISACA's list of guidelines and even the effective date of when those guidelines took place. And again, that's all they are. They're trying to help you get a way to go through the audit process using your professional experience, following a guideline to have kind of as your, I hate to keep using the same word, but as your guidance to the finished end product of this audit. One of the first guidelines that we see is called Using the Work of Other Auditors, which was effective March 1st of 2008. What that does, and we've talked about it a little bit already, is addresses how you should go around the process of using other people's work, other experts that are in the audit field, and especially if there are any constraints that could impair the audit work that need to be performed, you might be able to utilize some of this outside work. Now, you might consider outside work having an expert from maybe the next firm perform aspects of the audit where the nature of the audit is maybe highly technical, or the audit team just, you don't have enough resources, you don't have enough people, or people with the knowledge they need in the specific areas. And that's, something that to be considered, because in the IS field, there are a lot of vendors, a lot of technologies, some very, I won't say unique. They're very highly technical and maybe not utilized by a large number of people because of the type of application or the type of device that it is. So it's not unusual for you to have to go get that outside help. One of the other guidelines is about the audit evidence requirement that was effective May 1st of 2008. And the guideline covers how the auditor should be able to obtain sufficient and appropriate evidence and draw reasonable conclusions based on those audit results. Now, again, the use of evidence is important because without it, with it, to me, it's kind of what supports my billables, right? I'm coming up with a conclusion, people are going to say, well, how did you get there? And I just don't want to pull things out of thin air. I want to say, well, here, this is what I found. Here's my evidence. And from this evidence, this is the conclusions that I was able to draw. So, again, a guideline to help you about what is considered sufficient and appropriate. The other one, the CAT, the use of computer-assisted audit techniques. Now, you might need some tools to be able to record, transact, and process data that comes from an audit, especially when you think about the sheer amount of information that you might be looking at. And that's what these tools do. They help us do what we humanly can't do, which is to be able to sift through large amounts of information. So these tools can lead to an increased audit coverage, as well as being more thorough and more consistent in analyzing the data. And the tools could have, some sort of specific audit software that you're using. It might be something you've created a customized script to be able to go out and gather information, or any other type of software technique that's involved in just that gathering information, things that are a lot easier to do through that automation than you would be able to do by manually trying to review all of the information. Now, outsourcing of IS activities to other organizations, another guideline, effective May 1st, 2008. The organization that you're working with might partially or fully outsource some of their IS activities to a third party. Now, that third party could be a group of people that are on-site or off-site. As an example, I've been to many organizations where, and I'm trying to be very vague so I don't say specifically companies and names, but here's the situation. This company needed new hardware for the infrastructure and they just couldn't afford it. But what they found out is that there was a firm whose job was to specifically buy your IT department. They would buy the contract to run it, meaning that all of your existing employees would suddenly become employees for this new company, but they'd still work at your facility. And with that, they were able to infuse the money to be able to buy new equipment. And so over a long period, I guess you could say you are paying a little bit more for the people you used to employ, but that was also helping pay for the new upgrades or the new equipment that you wanted to have. And so there's an example, technically, that these people are third party to the organization, but they certainly were on site. And of course, off-site might very well just be having a consulting firm that comes in to do updates or repairs or whatever that you might be using. Anyway, so again, guidelines, that's what we're talking about, guidelines of the process of doing these audits. Now, the auditor is going to be responsible to make sure that you confirm the compliance of those third-party resources, but it has to still be within your existing contract agreements that you have with the organization, and maybe you may have to also have contracts and agreements with a third party, so you have the rights to be able to conduct that audit. So anyway, you need to know what your rights are to be able to audit a third party when technically it's a different one that hired you. Next one is the Audit Charter. Remember, charter is another nice word for contract. Guidelines for that on effective February 1st, 2008. It was designed to help the auditors to be able to prepare a charter or contract that would define their responsibilities, their authority, and accountability. A very important process, right? A lot of legalese that we need to go through to make sure that you're not in any violations of any type of regulations or other laws, and also to give you that, basically to give you that authority and responsibility to conduct those audits. A lot of times you have to almost call rank on somebody to say, look, I need to perform this audit, and they say, we're busy, we're not going to let you have access, whatever the reason is. And you can simply say, look, I've got the authority, the accountability, the responsibility. I've got it here in writing. It comes from people on the very high end of management. That's just kind of the idea, is that you want to make sure that your charter and contract gives you some of those responsibilities that you're looking for, or the authority that you need to do the audit. Materiality concepts for auditing information, effective May 1st, 2008. So there, what constitutes materiality? All right, so let's think of it this way. If I was doing a financial audit, I can measure the materiality in monetary terms. I mean, I can sit there and say, I have this much cash in, I have this much cash out. I mean, we have numbers I can use. I can say, look, this is what we're doing financially. When it comes into the information systems, that's not quite as a tangible thing that I can get. And so you can use this guideline to help you determine how materiality should be assessed. So, if we're trying to do evaluations of or valuations, of the controls, like physical access controls and logical access controls and change control systems and other types of controls, it's hard to put a finger on it. I mean, let's just say that I'm going to talk about a control that is trying to safeguard data in your database, whatever that data might be. And what's that worth to you? Let's say it's your customer accounts. What's that worth to you? I mean, there's the cost, of course, of the valuation of replacing or repairing the information. But then we have to worry about the customer's reactions, especially if their information was used maybe in identity thefts. I mean, I know I'm kind of just going right out there and saying, giving you examples of what I'm saying. It's hard to put some value on some of these controls, what it really means to you when you're trying to decide, what is it going to cost my reputation? What's it going to cost me to make my customers whole? Did it affect my customers? Are they going to be customers in the future? What's it going to cost just to recreate the information that was destroyed or altered, or all of those things? And so, like I said, it's a little harder to come up with some of those values. Next guideline is under due professional care, effective March 8th, 2008. Now, this guideline clarified the term due professional care as it applies to the performance of doing an audit. Basically, the guideline is there to assist you in applying your IT and audit assurance standards, as well as making sure you comply with the ISACA's Code of Professional Ethics. Again, going back to the terms that we talked about before, some due diligence, in this case, the due professional care. Guideline for audit documentation, effective March 1st, 2008. The guideline describes the documentation that you should prepare and retain in support of your audit findings. Now, this report can determine how to achieve the implementation of standards, guidelines talking about how you should use your professional judgment in its application, as well as being able to justify any departure you might have taken from existing standards. Oh, by the way, that is something that can happen, right? We could sometimes make recommendations that don't look like best practice or existing standards, completely within the realm to make those suggestions, but when you do go away from standards or sometimes best practices, you need to be able to justify why that was done, so that if anything ever occurred and somebody says, oh, you're liable because you didn't follow this best practice, you can say, well, hold on, time out. We looked at it, we analyzed it, we audited it, and these are the reasons why we departed from it. Again, just guidelines about your documentation.